You're listening to the Skeptics Guide to the Universe, your escape to reality.
Hello and welcome to the Skeptics Guide to the Universe. Today is Thursday, June 25th, 2026, and this is your host, Stephen Novella. Joining me this week are Bob Novella.
Hey, everybody.
Cara Santa Maria.
Howdy.
And Jay Novella.
Hey, guys.
So, of course, you've noticed that Evan was not on the show last week. He's not on the show this week. And this is because we have a sad but serious announcement that we have to make. Evan has resigned from the SGU, so he will no longer be on the SGU. I know this is not a surprise to many of you, but to many others who are not involved in our online communities where this has been a topic for over a week, this may be coming as a total surprise. So we'll give you the background on it. These are events that are very, very rapidly developing. It really started just like a week and a half ago. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So it came to our attention that, unbeknownst to any of us, Evan had a private X, / Twitter account. And on that account, he was expressing his political views and a lot of personal views. And over 2025, I think is when really this started to happen. So it's over the last year or so. And he said a lot of hateful, unskeptical, dehumanizing, terrible things on his Twitter account on X.
And to be clear, the account wasn't private. We knew back when we were all, maybe not we all, but back when many of us were on Twitter, like I've followed Evan. I haven't touched Twitter since it became X. I might have auto-posted some episodes. But from what I understand, he was posting under his moniker that he's always had, Evan SGU.
Yeah.
But he was posting almost in a pretty under the radar way. Like he wasn't even doing a lot of public posts. He was making a lot of replies to other people's posts.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think, Jay, Bob, and I are not on X. I post the show there, but I don't read a single post. I mean, I'm not following anybody. I'm not reading anything there. So I think because of the character of X,
the climate very much changed, and yeah.
But the more important thing here is the content of what Evan was posting. It's all on our SGU Reddit and on Discord. If you're interested, a lot of it involved the Israeli-Gaza war and just American politics in general. So first and foremost, none of the rest of us share any of these views. Find them even acceptable. But to clarify, this is not about Evan's politics. It's not that they were, leaning right or that they were conservative. It's that they were hateful, dehumanizing, and a lot of them were like conspiracy theories and unskeptical. And there's no other word for it, which is just, it's sad and shocking to the rest of us. How could this have happened under our nose, right? I mean, That's an obvious question that a lot of our listeners are asking. Like, how could we not have known this? For background, a couple of things. Again, obviously we knew Evan's basic political leanings, but he was systematically keeping these views from us over recent years. And he admitted to that. Like, he didn't feel comfortable talking about them with us. We all know he's a very private person, even more so after Perry passed away. I think that was his sort of primary outlet for this kind of stuff. And he just kept it to himself. And I think he compartmentalized it not only from us, but from his skepticism. He basically became radicalized in an echo chamber on this one issue, just a range of issues. And we never had the opportunity to talk to him about it, which might have had a moderating effect. We never worked through any of it with him. It was just all happening in the background,
and I think
from everything else.
That bears sort of deeper explanation. Like when you say we never had the opportunity to talk to him about it, just to clarify, what I'm hearing is not we didn't have the time or the energy.
No, he didn't tell us.
We didn't know.
Yeah.
Steve, you're not going to go around every week going, what is your most radical view this week? We had no reason to believe that this was something we needed to talk about. We have always known that there have been a range of political opinions on the show, and we have been friends. You guys have been friends with him for so much longer than I have. But there's nothing wrong with having a deep and actually there's something very right about having a deep and meaningful friendship, or think about all of your family members and all of their views. it's important that there are a lot of various views that individuals hold. And it's important that we develop the skills to be able to engage with people even when you don't agree with them. But there are boundaries to that. Mm-hmm. And there is a line in the sand where when somebody's views move into what, may be deemed as hate, what may be deemed as dehumanization. And as you mentioned, Steve, just like fly in the face of skeptical principles, there is no room for that. The problem here, and I think it's a problem that makes me very sad to my soul, is that Evan, whether he didn't feel safe or for what other reason, he chose not to open that side of himself up to us. And we were blindsided by this.
Well, Kara, and that's where I think we could have done a better job as his friend, because I remember several times talking to Bob where we would be like, we had a big discussion, say, about whatever, just, current politics. Mm-hmm. And we both noticed that Evan just gets dead quiet. That's just the way it was for the last, we can go back a decade on that. I chalked it up as him being private and him not being comfortable. Mm-hmm. But none of us prodded him, and out of respect for him, I was thinking, I'm just not going to drag information out of him if he's not comfortable sharing it. But I had no idea, that there was, there was some very serious things that he was thinking and feeling that he wasn't sharing,
Yeah, Jay, I felt similarly, except that for me, it was more of, my assumption was that they were, more extreme conservative takes on topics that he didn't want to discuss. And I was okay with not hearing that, especially in the political climate of the country these days.
And there's a difference, Bob, to your point, between an extreme conservative view, which fine, if that's what you have, and a dehumanizing view. Yeah, I just think none of us imagined that it went into this realm that it clearly went into. It just seemed so far beyond the pale.
And we shouldn't conflate those things either.
Exactly.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
But I had more conversations with Evan than you guys do. And so we've got to keep in mind, in 2016, remember guys what happened that year, there's been a massive political realignment in the United States. And all of us, this affected all of our politics, all of our views, the way we talk about it, et cetera. And I've been paying close attention to what Evan says over this time. And my sense has been that he has shifted considerably over the last 10 years. When he does talk to us about anything in the political realm, he's been very anti-Trump, very anti-MAGA when they are anti-science and anti-democracy and all authoritarian and all those things. So I thought, okay, so Evan is kind of moving along with all of us in this direction in response to this political realignment that happened. But again, that was all a systematic illusion that he was generating. Not that what he did say, I think, was sincere. He was just very selective in what he was saying.
It was kind of disarming, wasn't it? Like, okay.
Yeah.
I don't think he is secretly MAGA. I don't think that is the conversation we're having. But I also think it's important for people to understand that it's not like Evan was making similar statements to the statements he made on X, and Steve was just editing them out of the show. Of course not. We were blindsided by this.
Totally.
Like, Evan has played it very, very, very close to the vest. Mm-hmm. And obviously that was a choice he made, and it had an impact on us.
Well, Kara, I think Evan knew, we are not quiet people that keep our opinions to ourselves.
Right.
He knew very clearly that anything that he brought up, it would have been a heated and very complicated conversation to have with people like us, right?
But they would have been great.
And they would have
I don't disagree, Steve.
I wish, right?
But I think that was it could be part of the calculus here.
Yeah, he was avoiding the very conversations he needed to have to put a check on himself. So there's a certain amount of hubris in what he did, right? He didn't check himself. He didn't check with the people that are closest to him, that his skeptical colleagues, to bounce his, guys, I'm really affected by what happened in October. And, what do you think about this?
I guess we never said that, did we? That a lot of his words, a lot of this was sort of exacerbated by October 7th.
Oh, I think he's been radicalized in the last couple of years.
Yeah,
You know?
yeah. And I can't help but see parallels here, you know, and this is not to, I don't want to psychoanalyze Evan. I only want to take him at his word. That's the fair and just thing to do.
Yeah.
But, you know, when I think about my perspective coming from like a psychologist's perspective, it's so similar to what I see over and over when I work with patients who have this tendency to avoid feeling their feelings. Anytime something feels intense or difficult or conflicting, there is a very human tendency that some of us have to compartmentalize, to wall
Tamp it
up,
down.
to tamp it down. But what ends up happening, it leaks out in very inopportune, dangerous, and problematic ways. You cannot keep your feelings at bay forever. They will come out. And so the most healthy and appropriate thing to do is to feel them when they're happening and process them appropriately. And I think there are a lot of parallels with what was going on with Evan. He had a lot of thoughts and feelings.
Yeah.
Instead of bringing them out into the daylight with us, he hid them.
So let's talk a little bit about what we've been doing over the last 10 days or so when this sort of came to our attention.
Yeah, we're just hanging out,
Yeah, well, we have a lot going on, and then we had this dumped on us, but we've been, this has been consuming a lot of our time trying to deal with this. So first of all, we made a very concerted effort to be completely honest and transparent with Evan and supportive in the way that we can be, not of what he did or what he said, but personally, because he's still our friend. I had to remind people, I'm wearing 3 hats in this situation at all time. I'm his very close friend. I'm the producer of the SGU, and I'm the CEO of a company that does all these things. And I have to think of those 3 things at the same time. But also, we are all members of a broader community as well. And so are we, thinking of all these things at the same time, like, all right, Evan, let's talk about what happened here. Let's talk about how we got to this place and how we can get you through this, and just both personally and professionally. And we were working on that. We were working on that very hard. Now, it became immediately clear, how big a problem it was. And that this was going to be a long and painful process. But we were willing to work through this with him. He was sort of indefinitely suspended from the show. And, to basically give us time to sort of get our bearings and figure out what we need to do to move forward.
And for him to do some of this work.
And just begin this work so I could see, like, all right, what am I starting with here? How's this going to go? And everyone was trying, but he clearly had a long way to go. And then just a couple of days ago, Evan called me and he said, Steve, given everything that's happening, I am going to resign from the SGU. So it's funny, it never even occurred to the rest of us that this was like a pathway, but
I know, we were all like, what? Wait, what?
But Evan,
and then we're like, oh, okay.
In retrospect, like, that was actually the right decision to make. It's good in a number of ways, because first of all, it just clarifies things. It does make it easier in terms of us managing this situation going forward. It also means on the personal side, we could focus on Evan without it being tied to the professional and community aspects of it. It's like we could say, you know what I mean? It's like I could talk to Evan about this without it being like his eventual return to the SGU weighing in the balance. It isn't.
Of course, his role on the show would have been a massive variable in that conversation otherwise. But now it can just be out of humanity, out of,
out of
a goal to better
I made that clear to him. Yeah.
I think it's important to note, just from reading all of the feedback, my God, there's been so many people commenting. A lot of people just felt that the breach in trust makes him incompatible with the show moving forward. And we discussed that extensively, when we were trying to both make a good decision for Evan as his close friend, and also as the producers of this show, like, what is the right thing to do?
So I think that part, because again, I've been talking a lot with Evan about this. Evan, I think that's the first thing that he understood. Again, no one expected him to change his ideological views on a dime, right? That's going to be a long process. But the thing that he really got, and I think the thing that brought him to that decision that he knew he just had to resign, was that he sort of breached a professional trust with our community and with us and his fellow rogues. That you cannot, as a science journalist, science communicator, as a skeptical activist, as a member of a podcast where we have a pretty intimate, even if it's a parasocial, one-way, whatever, it's a pretty intimate relationship with our community. You can't have this secret life where you have all this stuff going on that is, anathema to skepticism and critical thinking. It was a complete breach of trust. It was a betrayal on many layers. And I think when he really fully wrapped his head around that, he's like, oh shit, I can't do this. I have to resign.
Yeah, I mean, it's like if you, as a physician, who's always like helping your patients understand a science-based approach to their neurological treatment, secretly was just never saw a doctor and only saw chiropractors.
Yeah, guys are taking homeopopathy on the side. Never told you.
Yeah,
like
by the way, no. Like, and I just want to address something really quick to any listeners. So first of all, like, I'm not on Reddit, but my partner has been like updating me of some of the things that have been that he's been reading. So part of the reason that I have been, quote, silent, because I'm hearing that a lot, like, where's Kara in this? Like, where's her perspective? Blah, blah, blah. We have been having conversations, all of us, and we don't need to issue, every day, separate statements. Steve's issuing statements. He's not pulling those out of nowhere. We're talking about
everyone's approving anything that I post online from the crew. Yeah,
exactly. B, I'm not on Reddit, which is partially why I'm not engaging on Reddit. I don't want to change that anytime soon.
Reddit's fun.
Yeah. But see, I do want to share from a personal perspective. So aside from the fact that I wasn't on the show last week because I was getting a colonoscopy endoscopy, which we can talk about in a bit if you'd like. And like, don't get weirdly some people were getting kind of conspiratorial about that. Like this was an avoidance mechanism. No. Have you ever made an appointment for a colonoscopy? You can't just get one real quick.
I know. I've been avoiding that decision for a whole year.
Exactly. Like this has been on the books. I'm not going to change it, so I had to go and do that. Unfortunately, so a lot of this information started to break for us sort of just as we were leaving and getting home from a conference that we were at a couple of... PsyCon, like 2 weeks ago. Unfortunately, at the exact same time, while we were actually there, my entire group at the hospital where I work, which is a very small, it's a huge hospital, but we have a very small department. We received word that my direct supervisor, who is also the direct supervisor of 35 of us, I think somewhere around 35 or 40 of us, that she had a recurrence of her cancer and that it very swiftly metastasized and that she had to have a pretty severe surgery and had complications from that surgery and ultimately died due to that sequence of events. And it all happened very quickly. Many of us were shocked by it. We were really taken aback. It's been a very difficult week personally and professionally for myself and for my colleagues because we had very deep emotional ties to her, but also she was a linchpin within our department professionally. And so I've been dealing with all of the fallout from all of this complicated stuff with Evan, on top of seeing my patients and having to be there for them, on top of my own personal grief and loss and the larger community of that. And that's why I've been MIA. And I think this speaks to a larger concept that we've been grappling with collectively, which is you do not know what is going on behind closed doors in somebody's life, good or bad. I think there are a lot of people who have asked, how could they not know? Clearly they knew and they were just, keeping it from us, or they were in cahoots, or no. Just like you never know which terrible person is committing a terrible, assault. Like you hear news of people all the time. Oh, he was a nice neighbor. How could he have possibly done this? Because you don't know. You don't know. Just like you had no idea that I was dealing with all of this stuff in the background because it's personal. And I didn't want to share it.
But Kara, I think my perspective is for both Discord and Reddit is that was a minority opinion.
I hope so.
I do think most people were like,
so I hope so.
Because I asked, the first thing I did was like, guys, give us the time to like get our bearings here and make sure that we get our response right. And most people heard that. Good. There's always going to be speculation. And I understand it. This is an upsetting thing that happened. It's upsetting 100%. To the community. There's been a lot of outpouring of support, which we greatly appreciate. A lot of outpouring concern for Evan, which I'm sure he appreciates.
Absolutely.
But of course, there's going to be some, kind of speculation, maybe not the most charitable speculation filling the uncertainty here. That's why we're trying to be as open about it as possible and why we're talking about it for so long on this episode.
Yes.
I do think it's important that we say, something very surprising happened here, something very upsetting, and we're all trying to work through it. We're trying to work through it as the SGU. We're trying to work through it as his friend. We're trying to work through it as a community. But yeah, it's good to keep in mind there's a lot. We're not all just living in podcast land over here. We all have lives going on in the background. It hasn't been that much time. We have a lot of stuff that we're dealing with over a very short period of time, more than you know.
Yeah.
I mean, it's been a huge emotional toll on all of us.
Totally.
I mean, as much as you'd like to think that we could handle things like this like easily in stride or whatever, it has been one of the most grueling 10 days that we've had since Kara joined the podcast. I can't tell you how many conversations and how many reactions and how many ways that we came at this and thought about it from every angle that we could. And then I'm like lying in bed at night and I just keep turning it over and over and over in my head, like, same questions you guys have. Because, again, we're telling you, as it was in reality. Like, I still don't fully wrap my head around this. I still don't. There's a part of me that doesn't believe that it happened.
Yeah.
I love Evan and I've known the guy for 30 years. I want him to get better. And we all have hope that Evan is going to find his way out of this.
Mm-hmm. And we're here for him, to help him every step of the way.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And then the SGU component, Steve and I just trying to figure out how to deal with this, and the trip to Australia and New Zealand coming up. It's been a nightmare.
Timing is terrible. It's never good.
Timing has been horrific.
I did want to talk a little bit about our editorial policy, since that's partly at the center of all this.
Yeah.
And we do talk about it every now and then. It's just a good opportunity, I think, to have a little bit of a meta discussion about this. So, as we've said in piecemeal, let me just wrap it all up. We are not a political podcast, which means that's not the focus of what we talk about. We talk about science, critical thinking, media savvy, reason, those kind of things. We try our best to be nonpartisan. That doesn't mean that we do not address political issues. We do all the time, because politics intrudes on science and science informs politics. At least it should. And we're seeing recently, if you have an anti-science administration, how much damage they could do to the infrastructure and institutions of science. We're talking about all of that, but we're trying to, as best as we can, to talk about it from a objective scientific perspective and not just like a narrow partisan perspective. Mm-hmm. And that's definitely going to be our policy going forward. And everybody knows that. Definitely all the rogues know that. And, maybe I need to be even tighter, sort of in maybe policing those fuzzy boundaries. But that's the editorial policy of the show. And then, again, it's sort of the expectation is that we are going to model good skepticism, critical thinking, and also just being honest, ethical people in our lives, because we are part of a community, and we have put ourselves out there, as prominent people in that community. And that's, of course, the thing that I think Evan most violated was that, not only our editorial policy, but also just that, again, that trust in the community, that perception in the community.
Yes.
And again, just letting himself get radicalized without having the humility to address that. The final question I think we need to talk about, because there's been so much speculation about this, is how do we move forward here? Again, Evan sort of clarified things for us by just simply resigning, which again, I think was the right thing to do. And we're all grateful that he did that. But, when Rebecca left the show, took us 6 months to settle on Kara, even though I know we've told you, Kara, you were the front runner from day one, but still.
You did a bunch of episodes.
Interview slash.
Yeah.
So, slash auditions, I should say. So, we've had to think about this among everything else. Like, what do we do going forward? We're not going to make any quick decisions. Don't expect any quick or rapid decisions here. We're going to take our time. This doesn't happen often on the SGU, right? We've had the same 5 rogues for the last 11 years.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, so
jeez.
In a way, we're going to.
Shouldn't we be retiring soon?
Well, that's Bob, part of our thinking going forward. I mean, seriously, is that we have an opportunity to rare opportunity to see, well, how can we use this situation to improve the SGU? Mm-hmm. And some things come to mind. It would be nice if we had more diversity on the show. And I mean that in every possible way, like diversity of background, perspective, not just like race and gender, but also maybe even country of origin, whatever. There's all kinds of ways in which we could bring different perspectives to the show. I'd like to bring younger talent on the show as well. So and everything's on the table, which again, it's a rare opportunity where we could say that, where we have a situation where, hey, we could rethink everything at this point. Mm-hmm. So we are going to take our time to do that. We are open to suggestions, as always. It's going to be a process. And it's a busy summer for us, so don't expect anything to happen rapidly. But we will move forward. I think we will come out of this stronger than we went into it. And again, I think we're going to leverage this as an opportunity going forward. And I'm kind of looking forward to it, actually.
Yeah.
All right, well, thanks everyone out there for listening to us. I mean, it's hard to know exactly what to say. We obviously have a lot more going on than what we could cram, into the opening of our show. This has been a painful, emotional process. We do appreciate, the support that we've gotten, but we will move forward. And in fact, we're going to move forward on this very show. I know we have to transition from this to a regular show. Kara, did you want to tell us more about your colonoscopy?
You want to hear about it, you guys?
Yeah.
Was it good? Was it no polyps?
Well, yeah. So first I want to ask, you guys have all done this before.
Oh, yeah.
Have you done a colonoscopy endoscopy?
Yeah, I've had both times. I had both, yeah.
Both times
Just
you had
one,
both. Okay, yeah. And so
entrance.
So mine, I'm getting a little early. I think the guidance here in the U.S. is to start at 45, but because I'm iron deficient and because I don't have a uterus, because I'm post-hysterectomy, so I don't have a period, and because I eat meat, we're all like, why don't I have enough iron? This doesn't make sense. So one of the ways to look into that is to get a colonoscopy, endoscopy, which, by the way, there's a chance I'll have to do a camera swallow test to look at my small intestine next, because they can't get to that with an endoscopy or colonoscopy. I mean, the only thing I'm really going to say is I think that all of the anxiety around this procedure at this point in time is not necessary. I think maybe there's the saying like, I'd rather get a colonoscopy. Like there are a lot of things I would rather. Yeah, I would rather get a colonoscopy than do many things. It's amazing. Yeah. And the prep isn't that bad.
That's gotten better too.
Yeah, this might be my unique experience. I can't speak for, my hospital had like 5 different options and you could choose. The prep that I chose was a very straightforward prep. It was just basically 7 doses of Miralax mixed in with an electrolyte drink of my choosing the night before and then the morning of.
7.
Yeah, it's a lot of Miralax, but it goes in perfectly clear. You cannot taste it. It's the flavor of whatever Gatorade, Pedialyte, whatever you chose.
Yeah.
It was very easy. I never felt sick once. I mean, it is a weird experience, basically. This is how I always... You guys are going to be so grossed out. Basically, peeing out of your butt is a very weird experience when you don't also have norovirus. I know all about that. Yes, that's the weird thing, though.
Well, not so much peeing, more of towards the fire hose spectrum, but okay.
Yes, just clear. It's very straight. But the thing is, the only other time in my life I've done that is when I was violently ill with norovirus. So when you're doing it, but you're not sick... It's kind of an interesting experience. You're like, this is throwing everything off. I feel very strange. But anyway, long story short, I get there. She was amazing at placing the IV. She talked me through, my pre-op nurse talked me through everything. They took me in very quickly. My operating nurse and my GI specialist / surgeon and my anesthesiologist were all incredible. And then my post-op nurse was amazing. All women, by the way, which was a wonderful experience. I will say those nurses are phenomenal because every patient they see is dehydrated.
Yeah.
And so finding that vein, I was like, how do you do this? She was like, I do 17 a day. I was like, okay. And yeah, I just got propofol anesthesia. She said, you're going to be out in no time. And then I was out and I woke up and it was a nice little nap. Would have never have known anything happened.
Yeah.
Felt great. And yeah, it was actually one of the easier doctor's appointments I've had. And I just share that, and I know not everybody has the same experience, but I just share this because if you've been putting it off because you're afraid of the prep or you're afraid of the anesthesia or you're afraid of just what it means to undergo, it's actually a lot easier than it used to be.
Yeah, it's no biggie now. You should do it.
Really, you should.
It could save your life.
It can save your life, absolutely.
Which drives me nuts how there's this movement on TikTok now to tell people not to get colonoscopy. It's some kind of conspiracy. Screw that. Get your colonoscopy. Don't listen to idiots on TikTok telling you not to get basic preventive care. My goodness.
Ugh.
All right, guys. Jay, you paying attention?
I'm here.
Pay attention over here. I'm going to talk to you about paying attention
I see what you did there, Steve.
See what I did there? Okay.
Nice.
So we talked about this on the show before a little bit, the neuroscience, the neuroanatomical correlates, what's happening in your brain when you're paying attention. Did you even know that attention is a thing that your brain has to do?
Yes.
Of course, even just as a clinical neurologist, I'm very aware of this because when the brain gets injured, attention is the first thing to go. It's like the canary in the coal mine. And why is that, Bob, do you think?
Because...
So let's say you get just a...
Why would it be the first thing to go?
Traumatic brain injury, right? You hit your head, you get knocked unconscious, you have sort of diffuse injury to the brain. It's like the first thing, the most affected function is attention.
Is it all in the outer layer of the brain? Was the cerebrum?
No, not a bad guess, but no. I said diffuse. So
yeah, part of it is. I mean, part of it in the frontal lobes. But I think is what you're getting at, Steve, the fact that it requires so much interconnectivity.
That and just energy, right? It is the most resource demanding thing that your brain does, and yet we don't really think about it. It happens in the background. And I'm including in that not only just directing your attention, but also filtering out all of the extraneous information and attending to only a subset of that information. And so
that's why you could focus for so long that you actually feel exhausted because of that.
Well, and just like I deal with this a lot with patients that I work with who, after a surgery or after some major toll on their body, they don't understand why they can't get through their workday. They're like, I'm just sitting all day.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, because your brain is so metabolically active. It requires so much just fuel. It requires so much sugar to function.
You get mental fatigue. Yeah.
Yes, and your body is trying to use all of that fuel to heal from your surgery. Like, it doesn't have enough left for your brain. It's a lot.
And there are people who have attention deficit, right? Attention deficit disorder. And so even when they're optimally functioning for them, they have impaired ability to manage their attention. And so knowing exactly what's causing that obviously helps us address it. So this is all bringing me to a recent study, which adds to our knowledge of the neuroscience of attention. The classic understanding is that attention, as Kara said, is mostly frontal lobe, and it's mostly top-down kind of control, like executive function. Although it's recognized that there are two basic types of attention, right? There's the top-down, goal-oriented attention when you're doing work, for example. But there's also bottom-up stimulus response attention. Yeah. Somebody throws something at you and you respond to it, right? So there's always these two types. Like when you're reading a book, you're focusing on the words that you are reading. That's your top-down, goal-oriented attention. But if a loud noise goes off, that will involuntarily grab your attention, right? But it turns out that this goal-oriented attention also has some other structures that are involved. And this is a study actually in mice. And what they were doing is basically looking at the parts of the brain that were active during different tasks that they gave the mice. I always like reading about, like, what do you have a mouse do to see if they're paying attention? So what they did was they trained the mice to pay attention to certain stimuli, and if they pushed their nose against the screen when the stimuli appeared, they would get a treat. So they would have to pay attention waiting for that stimuli. And it's
very easy to train a mouse to do that if they're food oriented.
Now, the stimuli would always occur in front of them. And on the sides, and their peripheral vision was distracting information. So the question was, how well are they able to filter out the distracting information and pay attention to the information that's going to give them the treat? Right? Does that make sense? So
what information were they actually looking for?
A trained visual cue. Like when the square shows up, you touch it, or whatever. So then what they did was they inhibited a specific part of the brainstem called the PLTI, that's the name of the structure, and to see what effect it had on their ability to do the task. And it turns out, so these neurons in the PLTI contain inhibitory neurons that connect to the superior colliculus. Now, the superior colliculus is a structure in the midbrain where we know it is involved with visual processing. And we thought originally, going back, it was only involved with visual processing, but it turns out it's actually a main relay center for all sensory input. And in fact, there's visual and auditory and visual spatial information all sort of going through the superior colliculus. And this is actually a very important mechanism for our multi-sensory processing. Does that make sense? And so but what they found was that there's these inhibitory neurons in the PLTI that go to the superior colliculus and actually inhibit distracting information. Right? Does that make sense?
And so did they inhibited the inhibitory neurons?
Yeah, so they inhibit the PLTI, and then now the mice cannot inhibit the distracting information.
And they gave the mice ADHD.
They gave them ADHD, and their ability to do the test tanked, right? They could not filter out the distractors. Then they allowed it to function normally, and they returned to their baseline performance.
Interesting.
Right? And there's a little detail where they say that the effect was mainly, so the effect of the PLTI was mainly to increase the accuracy and categorical precision of the decision boundary, separating the target from low priority distractors. Bob, that's some of that jargon that you love, right? Where it's
right.
When you understand every word in that sentence, you're like, it's perfect. It exactly says what's happening.
And it perfectly describes like what my partner does when he is reading.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like he cannot filter out just the important part of the sentence or the word he's on. He keeps getting distracted by the words around it. And so then it makes it so that what he's reading is impaired and is like he's reading the wrong words and he's reading them out of order.
Right.
How do we turn this into a drug, Steve?
Well, that's the ultimate goal, right? So anyway, to further explain that jargon, what they're saying is that it helps in when you're trying to, because again, if you're trying to pick an image, you could have an image that looks sort of like the target image, right? Mm-hmm. So that's the boundary, separating the target from the low priority distractors. How precise can you delineate between the target and a distractor? As they get closer and closer and closer together, when does your ability to separate those two things break down? And the PLTI helped the mice accurately make that categorical separation between the target and similar looking distractors. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Cool.
All right. So because this isn't a mouse and because it's in a part of the brain that's extremely primitive, evolutionarily speaking, and an ancient part of the vertebrate brain, they think that this exists in all vertebrates. This is just common to all vertebrate brains, which means it probably exists in human brains. Right. Yeah. But of course we have to confirm that because, our brains have evolved quite a bit and maybe it's there, but not important anymore. Who knows? Right. So we have to confirm this finding. We have to confirm that it is meaningful in humans, and see how it affects this kind of attentional behavior, separating things you're trying to pay attention to from distracting information that's not important, right? And if that holds up, then it's possible that this may become a new target for a subset of people with ADHD, because now we have to think, and to back up a little bit, because I know I've said this on the show before, but it's a really important concept. For some diseases, they start out with a clinical description, right? This disease is defined as having these signs and symptoms. And in neurology, that usually means that there's some neurological function that's impaired. But there may be many underlying causes for that function being impaired, both anatomically and biologically.
There likely are.
Yes,
like the brain is complicated.
Almost always, Exactly. We're almost always dealing with a category of diseases, like migraines are a category of disease. ALS is a category of disease. Multiple sclerosis is a category of disease. It's not one disease. And so maybe ADHD, similarly, maybe there are subtypes that are like executive function ADHD and PLTI, brainstem ADHD. And of course, if you're treating one like it's the other, it's not going to be effective, right?
Yep.
So stimulants may not work in this subtype. Who knows? Because it's just...
Or maybe this is the subtype for whom the stimulants don't work as well as they do for some people.
As well or at all, whatever. So, but there may be some other thing that we could do to make people with this type of ADD. Because usually, I would imagine this is not the hyperactive type. This is probably the inattentive type.
Yeah.
But there may be a subset within the inattentive type, where again you have the frontal lobe version versus the PLTI version, the brainstem version. So
or both. Maybe this during evolution, or not during evolution,
maybe
during
there are people with
development. Yeah, affects some frontal lobe function. There may be a downstream change from these neurons too.
And that's what we see happen in general as we learn more about the underlying pathophysiology of these diseases, we start to redefine them based upon their underlying cause rather than just how they look superficially clinically, right? So hopefully we will develop a diagnostic scheme for ADD that reflects the underlying neuroanatomical cause, and that will direct treatment.
Very cool.
Steve, I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
How do they know a mouse isn't paying attention?
Because again, I told you the model they used was how well they were able to press the button on the target, push their nose against the screen when they see the target and not be distracted by non-target images.
I can't help but point out that the rogue with ADHD asked that question.
Yeah.
Well, I can give you guys some insight.
Sure.
About the paying attention thing.
Mm-hmm.
And again, this isn't like exactly the way it manifests in everyone that has ADHD, but people that have ADHD can slip into like an alternate dimension with their attention. It's incredible. Like I could be sitting on the couch and I just go into a thought and my wife can be talking to me. My kids can be bouncing off the ceiling and I perceive none of it.
That's your excuse, huh?
Well, it's worked so far, Steve. So, yeah, but it is interesting. I mean, these are some of the things where you could say, hey, that's a perk, because you can hyper focus. But it really does take, it just bleeds away all the other reality around you at times.
Yeah,
you can be in. Yep.
Yeah, you're hyper focusing on what you want to focus on, and you're not managing your attention. You're not shifting it to something new that you need to be paying attention to, like your wife talking to you. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's just a general complaint about the novella genome. I'll put it that way.
All right, Jay, tell us how to make a queen bee.
Okay, Steve, to answer your question, first you have to create the universe.
Nice one.
Yeah, this is like, I think, to be very cool. It's very illustrative of how science functions. Because even when we have answers, scientists and researchers are always looking to have further understanding of things. And that's exactly what happened here. So what is the common understanding about, how is a queen bee brought into being? First of all, bees kind of function as a single organism, even though, there are individuals. They are really all communicating with each other and they all are following rules or however you would define that shape all their activity, and they are working with each other. The current knowledge has been that bee larvae become a queen because the queen is being fed something called royal jelly.
Yeah.
Do you guys know what that is?
Oh, yeah. There's a whole pseudoscience based on royal jelly.
Oh, yeah, there is.
Right?
Yeah.
Well, it's pretty cool. Like royal jelly is one of those weird insect things. So first of all, it's thick, it's whitish, it's a nutrient-rich secretion.
Gets everywhere, it's sticky.
Gets everywhere. It comes out of the worker honeybees' glands in their heads, right? So they're just excreting royal jelly out of their faces. It's not honey. Honey's made from nectar. Royal jelly is it's a specialized larval food.
Can I say, by the way, that whenever I see science fiction movies where they have aliens and they're so human, and you think there are animals on Earth that are way more alien than that thing that you're trying to convince me is an alien.
Right?
We have animals that squirt jelly out of their head to feed their queen. I mean,
oh my God. So this stuff is a concoction of water. It has proteins, there's sugars in there, there's fats, there's minerals, there's a small amount of vitamins. Yeah, it's pretty decent food source. I wouldn't think it would be for humans, but so they feed this to any larva, could be anyone. There's nothing special about the egg. And then what happens? It turns into a queen, right? This was what we previously thought. And when we say that, like it literally sends that larva down a very different developmental pathway than a standard worker bee. Now, all honeybee larvae get some royal jelly early in their life. This is like one of the things that they give. It's a food source for them. But the larvae that they select to become queens, they keep feeding it to them throughout their development. So, as the adult queen continues to eat it, it was thought that this was, one of the factors or a primary factor in why that larva turns into a queen. However, we are talking about this today because there was a new study in Nature and they found evidence that is not the complete story. So royal jelly is still an important factor, but according to the research, queen bees, they're also shaped by literally the structure, like the cell that they gestate in. It's built specifically to develop a queen. So a typical structure in a beehive is like the hexagonal, 5-sided thing that we're all very used to seeing. That is not where they're stored. They actually have a separate little cocoon that they make for them that hangs off the bottom of the hive, and it's peanut shaped. That little thing that they make specifically to grow a queen has some properties to it that they found that we did not know about. So the future queen is blah, blah, blah. So that peanut-shaped chamber that they put the larva into, what's different about it? Well, first of all, the wax it's created out of is not just like standard honeycomb wax. It's a special wax, has different properties. It actually retains heat better, and the chemistry of it is very different. It's not as dense. It's a little more flexible. It just overall has a different chemical profile, and it also appears to be suited for like keeping the larvae warm and moist during that developmental period. And they tested it, and this is something that really matters here. They raised the queen destined larva with the same food but changed the wax environment, right? So they just took a queen larva. They kept doing everything that the worker bees were doing, but they just popped it into a regular wax cell, right? And the queens that grew from that did not grow as large. They weren't as robust. They just weren't up to it.
I sense a new pseudoscience here, Jay. There's going to be a whole queen wax based pseudoscience.
The products are already coming out.
You have to do your ear candling with queen wax, not just regular old shitty wax.
So they call it the worker cell wax. This is like they'll eat cake level of people down in the hive, like they don't get the good stuff. But that worker cell wax just does not do the same thing to the larva. Now, I'm curious, of course, there's so many other tests that they can do with this. Like, would that wax cell that they make for the queen only produce a queen, or could it be used for other things? I don't know. It's just such a cool dimension here that they've added to it. They also identified that there are these young worker bees that seem to be specialized for building these cells. They call them the queen cell builders. I mean, what a unique name. And they're generally younger than the other builders. They run hotter. They have a hotter body temperature. They show different gene activity while doing the job. They're not a permanent caste. Like, these are just a certain subset of bees that come about when they have to build the chamber for the queen, and then they go away.
They should call them the Queen's Guard.
Yeah, and they do appear. They just shift temporarily into these specialized roles when the colony needs them, and that's what's so weird about honeybees. That's so weird about these bees. Like, they literally can change who and what they are in the moment when the hive needs it. And then they go back to being just regular worker bees. And there's a million questions in there I have. Like, who gets picked? How? What part of the hive makes a decision that these certain bees are going to get picked? I know that pheromones play a big part, but where are these decisions being made?
Yeah, I suspect there probably is a diffuse metabolic decision. I doubt it's not like there's a foreman of the colony who's saying, "Hey, you go here, you go there." You're now a queen bee,
So you could think of a beehive or any group of bees as a superorganism because
they're a colony organism.
They really do function as one, and it's incredible to think that all of these things that happen inside the hive are coordinated, and they're constantly working, and they seem to all know exactly what they're supposed to be doing at any given time. As an adult male with ADHD, I'm largely confused in my life. You know what I mean? Like I wish I had some pheromones in my room that were just telling me like what to do from moment to moment.
Jay, you could always join the Borg Collective.
That's true. I gotta
recommend it.
All right. Thanks, Jay.
Yeah.
All right, Kara, tell us how the Trump administration is going to cancel wind projects.
I know. I was like, I love that you put in our show notes for this week, it just says canceling wind. I was like, the wind is canceled? Oh, no. No, but this is actually...
No more wind.
I know. Like, I'm making light of something that is making me very angry, and it's making me very angry for multiple reasons. Let's get one level deep. Okay. Did you guys know that the Trump administration is about to pay $765 million to cancel 4 wind turbine projects?
Yeah, and it's not the first time.
It's
not the first time. This will total
That's ridiculous,
$2.5 billion. $2.5 billion across all these different companies and all these different deals. So for context, these deals were in place during the Biden administration. So this money has already been, exchanged. There has already been land that was leased, and there have already been deals in place to start developing and building these wind farms, basically these big turbine projects in different aspects or different areas of the United States. This specific one, the $765 million 4 projects that I'm referring to right now are in, New York, the Central Coast of California, and the Gulf of Maine. They were all in the early stages of development, so they hadn't really started to move forward, and they were likely going to be killed anyway. But basically, what the Trump administration is doing is using our tax dollars to reimburse this company, Invenergy, $765 million, which is a little less than what the company had originally paid for the leases. But it doesn't end there. Like, if that doesn't make you angry enough, guess what the deal is also for? It's not just to cancel wind turbines. It's so that Invenergy will then put the money towards the development of 5 new natural gas fired power plants.
Mm-hmm.
So we are paying tax dollar money to kill deals that are already in the place for green energy and induce more carbon emissions.
I mean, the hypocrisy here, too, is just amazing because aren't these supposed to be the free market people who want the market to work things out and are against? And what they're essentially doing is putting their big fat thumb on the scale to say, no, kill this project and burn more gas over here.
And the thing that's so infuriating is there's a quote here. Let me find it. There's a quote here by Interior Secretary, because this is the Department of the Interior that's sort of like spearheading all of this. Interior Secretary Doug Burgum, who said, quote, "The offshore wind leases were sold under the assumptions that taxpayers would indefinitely subsidize costly, unreliable projects," which obviously is a very weighted quote. But then basically, they're turning around and doing the same thing. They're doubling down on their taxpayer dollar to then subsidize dirty energy projects. Now, I should be clear here that part of the deal is also, at least in this specific deal, is also to invest in geothermal plants, which are lower emission approaches, and they are more renewable. Interestingly, the Trump administration does seem to favor geothermal. It's pretty much, I think, the only. Can you guys think of any other renewable energy approaches that this administration is promoting other than geothermal?
No, I mean, they do support nuclear, but that's not really renewable.
Oh, yeah, of course, nuclear. So nuclear
carbon,
and geothermal.
It's not renewable.
Mm-hmm,
right.
Mm-hmm. So they're low carbon, yes. But of course, Geothermal is also renewable. And so, as I mentioned before, this is just one in a series of deals. This one is, a $765 million deal, but it takes the collective cancellation. And again, these are taxpayer dollar payouts for these companies that had these leases up to $2.5 billion. So it's not just we're not going to pay for renewable energy. It's we are so spiteful about the concept of renewable energy that we are going to pay out these deals. It's the opposite of we're going to cut these projects and abandon them and not pay for future development. It's we're actually going to pay these companies back to not build.
It is spiteful. And it's so disruptive to the industry because now they can't, like from administration to administration, they don't know if their long-term investments are going to be viable. It's terrible for business. Uncertainty is the worst thing for these kinds of businesses.
Yeah.
And it just seems to be like, it just all seems to be like a revenge motivation because this, the statistics show how beneficial these are. There's no reason to not be funding those wind turbine projects. I mean, they're effective.
Yeah, these are offshore, and they're big, which are the more effective ones. They're more efficient, and they had the potential of generating a lot of cheap electricity. I mean, this is the way we should be going. This is the way the market is spontaneously going too.
Yeah, that's the thing that I think we have to remember here is that this new contract or this new change to the contract is with a company called Invenergy. They are really playing ball, but at least they negotiated to be able to invest in geothermal and not just natural gas. But the contracts that have been turned over and paid back out previous to this had a clause in them that they have to only invest in natural gas or in fossil fuel energy attempts. And also it's not just American companies here. I think I shouldn't be using the royal we here. The administration did the same thing with a French energy company. So it's exactly as you mentioned, Steve, like we're not just talking about American companies' trust in their own government to commit to long-term projects, but these are also, I think they have geopolitical consequences as well. When international or multinational companies are looking to invest, they're just going to choose not to invest here.
Mm-hmm. But also just imagine that you could only build fossil fuel, resources. And of course, this is all based upon Trump saying that he thinks climate change is a hoax. So it's all based on science denial. Whether he believes it or not, who can ever know? But the bottom line is climate change denial is pseudoscience.
Yeah. And I think we also have to remember that this stuff it's just like when we talk about, I don't know, a good analogy I think is conservation efforts across the globe when it comes to critically endangered species. When we talk about energy necessity, you can't just paint everything with a broad brush. Like specific to these deals, a lot of these communities, especially in the Northeast, were relying on these wind farms. This was part of their calculus to meet their energy demands. And so there's a quote here from Hillary Bright, who is the executive director of an offshore wind advocacy group, who said, replacing coastal offshore wind with geothermal or natural gas infrastructure in another region does nothing to address rising ratepayer affordability concerns, reliability challenges, or potential gaps in power supply in the Northeast and Mid-Atlantic. Because basically in their deal, they said, okay, you need to make these natural gas and geothermal plants, and they're in different states.
Yeah.
They're like in the Midwest. Like that's not helpful to these communities that are blindsided by this. So just across the board, this is just yet another example of a series, I think, of decisions by this administration that are going to have knock-on effects that leave people in more harm and leave people needing more. It's a waste of money. It's ideologic only. It is not science-based. And it reminds me of, do you remember those old studies where back when we were moving over to LEDs and they were giving people the choice from an incandescent or an LED, and then they were measuring hard political persuasion. Mm-hmm. And the people who had the most extremist views were willing to choose an incandescent bulb even if it costs more than the LED.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Just to make a point.
It becomes like
what
a culture
that point
war.
is, I still don't understand. Yeah. Exactly.
It's like making a political statement with your light bulbs. I mean,
come on.
Yeah, I know. It's crazy. This is another one of those issues where politics intrudes upon science, right? And this is
Yes,
where
100%.
science denial is sort of winning the day here. It is so counterproductive. Meanwhile, the rest of the world moves on and leaves us in the dust. It's like it's not good. It's not good politics. It's not good policy. It's not good for our economy. It's not good for for climate change. It's not good for anybody.
It's not good for the people.
Yeah.
The people will suffer from this.
Except maybe the fossil fuel industry that Trump said, give me money and I'll do whatever you want to do.
Yeah, it's good for the pockets of the people who already have a lot of money and power.
All right, Bob, give us an update on the International Space Station. It's going to be there for decades to come.
Right. Yeah, I've been seeing discussions pop up and news items popping up about the now essentially inevitable demise of the ISS, the International Space Station. Thought it'd be interesting just to dive into some of these details. Of course, the history we're generally familiar with the history of the International Space Station. Who remembers? I remember this day when the first module was launched. That was towards the end of November in 1998. Yeah. And this the first module. I mean, I had forgotten the name of this, but this was the Russian-built Zarya module. It was U.S. funded, but Russian-built. The name means sunrise, and this is the first component that really went up that provided the initial power and propulsion, which is obviously the critical components that you need for this. And then by around 2000, I think, is when the time that astronauts basically started living there and spending serious time there. And now it's like basically the size of a football field, and it has a mass of about 400 plus metric tons. This is a behemoth in orbit around the Earth. The legacy of the ISS, I mean, it's not over yet. I mean, there's still definitely a few years of, I think around 2031 is when they're thinking of deorbiting it. But so we still got some time here to do to even improve on its already dramatic legacy. One of its legacies is clearly going to be biology, because when you're orbiting the Earth, you have a unique microgravity laboratory that you can use 24/7. So studying over the years we've studied the impact on the human body to microgravity, and learning how bones lose density and how muscles atrophy when you're in that environment. And certainly this information has helped us to better treat and understand osteoporosis here on Earth. But also beyond biology, there's also experiments on climate change that they've done over the years, material science, physics, and more. But one of my favorite legacies, I think, is the idea that the ISS showing that nations can work together pursuing science. And these are nations that don't generally get along anywhere else but in low Earth orbit. So from this perspective, I think the ISS is as much of a diplomacy success as it was, or it is, an engineering success. So that's something that might not be generally recognized, but scientists get along, and they have been getting along in low Earth orbit. So then why are we scuttling this thing then? Why are we planning on getting rid of it? Well, I mean, the structure itself is kind of creaky, and I'll say that it's become increasingly problematic. They've identified many small leaks and cracks in some of the older modules. I have kept reading about air leaks that have been identified in certain areas. And in the past, NASA has even had to initiate the safe haven posture, where they make the astronauts isolate themselves inside docked spacecraft. Especially, this was done during, there were very strict precautions during, if there's like a lot of heavy maintenance or repair work going on, especially by the Russian cosmonauts. So that's when they would have to initiate this safe haven posture, just to be extra safe for worst case scenarios. But with all of these issues, they have been able to manage the maintenance of the space station, and it's been going okay. But the repair costs are rising year after year. That's definitely getting worse and worse. And also, by the time 2030 rolls around, the ISS will be well beyond its design life. So we got more out of it than we had initially anticipated. So we got that going for it at least. And also, NASA just has, how do I say it? They just have far less interest in managing and being 100% responsible for such a thing, right? It's kind of going to follow its plans that it has with the moon, right? Letting private companies build their own commercial space stations in the future. And some companies are already out there; they're already doing the designing, so they want to follow that template that they followed with after Apollo, with the second major push to get boots on the moon. And also, don't forget, NASA spends about $3 billion a year on the ISS, and that's $3 billion. That's not just going to disappear. That money then will be available for other things like deep space exploration, specifically the Artemis program. So that money will be put to good use. Hopefully, who knows? In this age of like budgets, we don't know what's going to be happening necessarily with NASA budgets in the near future, but we'll see. So all right, so how are they going to deorbit this guy? This is something that you can't just like wing it, right? Or you can't leave it to just like let the orbit decay and see what happens, because this thing is so big that you've got to absolutely be as safe as possible, because even though a lot of it's going to burn up during reentry, there's going to be still a lot of stuff that could potentially hit the land. You got to absolutely make sure that it lands in a very safe place. So what they're going to do is they're going to actually NASA's contracting with SpaceX to develop a U.S. deorbit vehicle. And this is fascinating. I like calling this deorbit vehicle a space station killer, because that's exactly what it's doing here. Now, Jay, you'll like this. This U.S. deorbit vehicle is a Dragon-derived spacecraft. And one of the cool things about it is that it's got a much more powerful propulsion trunk, as I heard it described. So we're talking 46 Draco thrusters. It's going to have 6 times the propellant that it would typically have, and roughly 3 to 4 times the power generation and storage of the standard design. So this is going to be quite a beast that essentially docks with the ISS and pushes the station towards the Earth. It's going to just like kind of guide it through the ISS through. It's kind of like they described it as like a death spiral. It's just not going to push it down to the Earth. I've seen it described as this death spiral, and expect this to happen around 2031. I was wondering why it would take so long if this is going to happen, and if this process is going to start in 2030. Why is it going to, why aren't they expecting this until 2031? Because the sequences that they are planning to make this happen is kind of complicated. So one of the sequences that have been tossed around is having the final crew depart the space station once it's been lowered to about 330 kilometers. So they're going to lower it and get it at that point, as low as 330 kilometers. Then the crew is going to depart. That's it. There'll be no more people on the station ever again. And then after that, it's going to go through potentially months of just a natural orbital decay before this final deorbit operations at lower altitude take place. So that's kind of one of the plans that they have. But who knows if they're going to alter that a little bit here and there. Hard to say right now. This following point here was really interesting. So where is it going to land? Where are they going to dump this? And they're going to aim it anyway towards a place called Point Nemo. It's the most remote location in the South Pacific Ocean. Have you guys heard of Point Nemo?
No.
Yeah.
I love the name. So this is about 2,600 kilometers or 1,600 miles from the nearest dry land. So it's known as the Spacecraft Cemetery. It's also known as the Oceanic Pole of Inaccessibility, which is such a fun name. So this is an area in the middle of the South Pacific Ocean that's really not used much by any other human activity. So there's not a lot of shipping there. There's not a lot of fishing there. So not much actually is happening there. That's one of the reasons why it's so safe to have this potentially, tons of metal come crashing down onto it. The ironic part here is that the nearest humans to Point Nemo is essentially the astronauts themselves on the ISS. When the ISS passes overhead, the astronauts would literally only be about 415 kilometers or 258 miles away. So they will be the closest people to that area, at least, in their orbit as they pass by. Also, this place, I didn't know that this was essentially a dumping ground of space objects. And all the space powers essentially use this area as a dumping ground. United States, Russia, Japan, and Europe. They've in total crashed more than 263 space objects into this area, including the Mir space station, which you guys may have remembered. Most of the ISS is going to burn up during reentry, and then whatever remains is just going to sink to the bottom of the ocean, fairly deep at that point. But what you're going to have left is what they expect is fragmented pieces of metal. Primarily, they say that the large, dense components that can survive the reentry, like a lot of the pressure tanks that they use, are very, very hardy and will likely survive. And most of the materials used in the ISS are considered relatively safe for that ecosystem. It's a lot of aluminum, a lot of titanium. So they say that it's basically not toxic to marine life in the quantities that, of course, that survive the reentry. And they could even act as artificial reefs once they settle down there after a while. But of course, it's not that. I don't think it's going to be that simple in terms of the environmental impact, because it's not going to be toxic, but really a lot of environmental researchers argue that there's still too many unanswered questions on this topic. There's been very limited research. When you've got the spacecraft debris, right, and whatever reentry residues that may have been created as it's being deorbited, how are these going to impact these ecosystems over time? We're really not sure. No one has gone down there and said, all right, let's go down right now and just see what's going on with the deorbited debris that's already down there. Nobody has taken a look. So to me, it's a little bit dicey, like what kind of impact this could have over the long term. Sure, the footprint of debris that's been sent down there is super tiny compared to what we've done to the similar pollution like on the land. So it's the footprint's far smaller, but still I think it's important to find out especially if we continue doing this, that what kind of impact are we having on these ecosystems. So that's an important point. But otherwise, yeah. So we've only got like 4 or 5 years before the ISS is gone. It's really sad. I really wish they could have just lifted it to a higher orbit and left it there for, I don't know. I mean, imagine having this in a museum. And I know to make that happen is probably close to impossible and ridiculously expensive, but it would have been nice to have it in a higher orbit. Just to know that it was there, that maybe in the future it could be something that would be, an artifact in maybe it's some orbital museum. But of course, if this thing is in a higher orbit for a long period of time, it's also a target for potentially causing a disaster in debris in space. If that thing was hit and, causing the classic issue of this cascading effect of debris creating more debris. It could be very risky as well. So maybe that wasn't even not even a good idea, even if it were possible. But we will miss it. But in its place, I think it's good to know that NASA, or not just NASA, but NASA will be working with private companies to create their own, orbital commercial platforms in low Earth orbit. And so I think this push to expand industry into low Earth orbit, and potentially like hotels are talking about orbiting hotels. Who knows how long that's going to take, but it should be an interesting evolution of the space program in the coming decades.
Yeah, I think I was reading that there's multiple proposed replacement space stations from some U.S., some Europe, China, and private industry.
Yeah, I'm curious to see how these private companies can do in terms of creating such a fiendishly complex systems to launch into low Earth orbit. But I mean, they've done some great stuff with Artemis and going back to the moon. But I'm sure they're capable of it. But it won't be cheap, right? To create a brand new, if smaller, kind of space station in orbit. I mean, imagine, wow, that's got to be quite expensive, but so much fun to contemplate. Steve, I can't help but think about For All Mankind, that show on Apple that shows an alternate history of really intense investment and development of low Earth orbit, the moon, and even Mars. I wish I want to be in that universe, sort of.
Yeah.
Sort of.
All right, thanks, Bob. So there's one more news item. I couldn't let this one go and not,
oh yes,
and not talk about it. So
this is great.
A couple of months ago, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth abandoned our longstanding policy to require flu shots at military bases in the U.S. This is across all of the branches of the military. And he got rid of it. He claimed that flu shot requirements were quote unquote not rational, and that he was going to restore freedom to military members. And guess what happened?
Everything was fine.
So what happened was flu is ripping through military bases. So last week there was an outbreak sweeping through the Lockland Air Force Base with at least 222 cases and 4 hospitalizations and 1 death. So,
interesting.
Yeah, so they just say, okay, maybe that wasn't such a good idea, and they just restored the flu mandates for military bases.
I wonder how he's rationalizing this, Steve. Like, how does he, save? Yeah, who cares?
Again, it's another example. Again, this is not by design. This is by coincidence, but we had to talk about this. Another example of ideology and political whatever trumping just basic science, right? I mean, there's a reason why you pack a bunch of people together in close quarters. You have I don't know how many people sleeping in barracks, and it's ripe for disease. Militaries have known this for thousands of years. This is like the biggest threat to a military.
Yeah, remember the Spanish
historically,
flu?
Is when you put a bunch of people in close quarters, that infectious diseases can wreak havoc, and so just do basic precautions like a flu vaccine is necessary. So I mean,
Steve, an interesting aside. I recently read that World War I was the first big war, I guess.
Yeah.
That actually had more people killed by the war rather than just disease and other unrelated things.
Oh, jeez.
As Kara was saying, the 1918 flu pandemic killed 43,000 U.S. soldiers. In World War II, dysentery, especially on the Pacific Islands, was had a horrible death toll. I also remember Alexander the Great military leader, he died of dysentery, if I recall. He would lose more soldiers to things like dysentery than to actual wounds on the battlefield.
Does a Spanish flu, which of course is a misnomer, does that obviate what I just said about World War I? Because we had so many people died from that.
Well, yeah, but a lot of people died from the war too.
Yeah. True.
And the other thing is that then the two were synergistic, right? The war also spread the flu, because you're moving people around. It's bad. Yeah, just vaccinate your soldiers. I mean, just common sense, common basic, preventive health. But just the rapidity with which this bit him in the ass is dramatic.
I just kind of confirmed it here. World War I is the first major global conflict where more soldiers died from combat than from infectious diseases.
It was also the first really mechanized war.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
It was a meat grinder, an absolute meat grinder.
Oh, my God.
All right, guys. Last week I played this noisy.
What?
Right, Kara? What's going on there? Anybody got any guesses?
None.
All right. Well, it's a tough one. It's a strange sound for sure. A listener named Mark Penny wrote in, and then Kara, he said his name is pronounced Meppy. But I can read the words that he wrote. Mark Penny. I can read that. I guess that's his nickname. Anyway, Meppy says, my guess this week is 90% likely wrong, but it sounds like a door or maybe a screen door with an old style big fat spring and or gas closer on it making most of the noise. So basically, hold the door. It is not that, but yeah, of course it has that creaky door sound. That is one of the things I thought someone would guess, but you are not correct, and thank you. Another listener named Garrett Volino wrote in and said, good afternoon, Jay. Guess for this week's Who's That Noisy? Someone stripping bamboo to create bamboo paper. Thanks. Steve, have you ever heard of someone stripping bamboo?
Yeah, sure.
Does it sound like that?
I have no idea.
So you haven't heard it?
He's heard of it.
I've heard of it. I thought you said, have you heard of it?
Anyway, that is not correct. I have another guess here. This is from Michael Saucedo. And Michael says, hi, Jay. I hear what sounds like something elastically stretching to a set point and some kind of machinery. My first thought was crossbows being loaded, but it sounds bigger than a crossbow. So I'm going to guess that what we heard was 3 ballista being loaded by some machinery. Why people are loading ballista in modern day, I could not tell you. That's a really cool guess, and now I want to know what that sounds like. That's not correct, but definitely a fun guess. And then we have a listener named Seth Beach, and Seth writes, "Hello, my name is Seth from Central VA, and I'm a new listener. This is my first time guessing, but I think it's some sort of door opening in a video game, probably Call of Duty or a game similar to it. Have a great time in the land down under." It absolutely does sound like a video game door creaking open because it has like a very pronounced over-the-top, squeak to tell you the door is opening. But that is not correct, and we did not get a winner. So let me tell you what this is. This is something called a hydraulic rock splitter machine.
A rock splitter?
Yeah, so imagine this. It looks like kind of like a jackhammer, except it doesn't do the motion of a jackhammer. It just pushes the piston out. And, the operator could be like holding it and leaning into the rock and pushing in that single piston, and then it punctures the rock and it cracks it open.
It sounds like a jackhammer.
Take a listen again. Yeah, you wouldn't expect a rock to make that creaky noise, but that is the sound of the rock breaking apart and opening up. Yeah, very powerful tool. Do not operate while intoxicated. That's my advice. I have a new noisy for you this week, sent in by Jethro Pugh, Kara Pugh, Pugh, right?
Probably.
Pew, pew.
Okay, Pew Pew. And here it is.
Straight up. Gorgeous.
What is that?
I don't know what it is, but it was gorgeous.
Did you hear that guy? Yeah, so if you guys think you know what this week's noisy is, or you heard something cool, what do? You got to email me at wtn@theskepticsguide.org. Steve, we have accomplished so much this year.
Mm-hmm.
Many conferences and events have come and gone, but we have just a few more, and we'd like to tell you about them very quickly. So our next thing that we do is going to be 3 things, which is actually 10 things. So we will be appearing in LA.
Yay!
This is right where Kara and Brian Wecht live.
It's true.
And July 17th, that's a Friday, that night we will be having the SGU Secret Meetup. This will be at the Center for Inquiry West. This will be at the Carl Sagan and Andrean Theater. 6 to 9 p.m., there will be food. I always cater these events. It's a ton of fun. It's a low number event, which means that you'll be able to hang out and talk to any of us about anything that you want. It'll be the SGU. It'll also be Andrea Jones-Roy, Brian Wecht, George Hrab, and if you look closely, Ian will be lurking in the back of the corner there with something covering his face. But please do consider joining us. It's going to be a lot of fun. Then the next day, July 18th, we have something called SGU Live and Beyond.
Ooh.
The origin of this show was that, that night we will be flying to Australia, and we didn't have enough time to do a private show and a skeptical extravaganza. So we did a semi-mishmash of these 2 shows. So it'll be a live SGU Live podcast recording. I mentioned that that's live. It's live. And then we will also be doing a lot of other bits and fun things to entertain the audience that will last about 2 hours, right? So the private show is 2 hours. There'll be a lunch break and then for an hour. And then there will be 2 hours of just having a ton of fun, hanging out, audience interaction. It's going to be a really good time, and we hope you join us. If you'd like to go to either of those events, of course, go to theskepticsguide.org, go to the events page, and if you have any issues or questions, you can email us at info@theskepticsguide.org. But that is just the beginning, because that is literally our layover city to get to the other 2 conferences.
Then we go to Sydney.
That's right. So we fly to Sydney. we prepare ourselves for our final push to get there for the conference. We will be hosting the SGU's Nauticon conference. That is being co-hosted by the Skepticon committee. This is Skepticon number 42.
42.
If you're interested in joining us at that conference, there's lots of things going on at that conference. It's not just come to the conference, because there's all these different things that you could buy tickets for. The best thing for you to do would be just go to skepticon.org.au. I do know that we have tickets left for the Skeptical Extravaganza. We have tickets left for the Friday and Saturday live podcast recording. And of course, you could buy tickets to go to the conference itself. So if you'd like to see us live in Australia, and sadly, this might be the last time we do it. We've been talking about it, just don't know if there's going to be another one after this. It would be a great chance to come. Now, let me remind you, Nauticon is a community building conference. This conference is about having a lot of fun, meeting people, and having the time to hang out and learn about the other people that are in the community. We will thoroughly entertain you. We have so much content that we couldn't even get to all the content that we wrote. But it's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be a lot of exciting stuff that we're doing. There will be a ton of humor. You'll learn stuff. And most importantly, I promise you, you will have a really, really good time. So please consider joining us at skepticon.org.au. That's the website to go check out if there are what tickets you want to get to see us. And Steve, there is another conference that's happening.
Mm-hmm.
Steve, have you ever been to New Zealand?
Yes, 3 times.
You have been to New Zealand, and how much do you enjoy New Zealand?
It's gorgeous.
Yeah, so I 2 countries. Well, one's a country and one's a state in the United States. New Zealand and Alaska were the 2 prettiest places I've ever been to in my life. I do think New Zealand wins out because it's just got so much more. But still, gorgeous, amazing, and we're very excited to go back to New Zealand. We're going to be doing the New Zealand conference. You can go to conference.skeptics.nz. We will be doing a few things there. One is there's a ticketed event. We will be doing our Skeptical Extravaganza that we hope you guys come check us out. If you've never seen it, it's an incredibly fun show. We've been doing this show, I think we're on our 12th year. It's a blast, so consider buying tickets to that. And then we will be at the Friday night dinner, and then we'll be at the conference and handling all of the content of the conference on Saturday. So if you're interested in seeing us in New Zealand, go to conference.skeptics.nz.
And Jay, don't forget, we will be at DragonCon in Atlanta, September 3rd through 7th. We have several panels that we are booked for. We're going to be doing a couple of panels with Christian Hubicki on different kinds of robotics. And we are setting up a private SGU recording there as well. Details are forthcoming. All right, guys, let's go on with science or fiction.
It's time for science or fiction.
Each week I come up with 3 science news items or facts, 2 real and 1 fake, and then I challenge my panel of skeptics to tell me which one is the fake. Are you guys ready for 3 news items this week?
Yes.
Okay. Item number 1, examination of proteins taken from the Homo naledi burial site indicates significant interbreeding with contemporary Homo sapiens. Item number 2, a new analysis finds that the life cycle reduction in greenhouse gas emissions from switching from diesel to fully electric medium and heavy-duty trucks is as much as 92%. And item number 3, in a study of balanced bilingual subjects, scientists found that different languages share a common semantic map in the hippocampus. Kara, you're up first, and I'm happy to explain any of these since you're going first.
I'm going to take them in reverse order because I'm taking them based on my comfort level. What is balanced bilingual subjects mean?
The subjects spoke English and Spanish equally fluently. They were balanced in how fluent they were in each language. They weren't like English speakers who learned some Spanish, right?
Gotcha.
Bilingual growing up.
So this is interesting because we do think of the hippocampus as a memory center, and we think of it often as like sort of like visual, like procedural, like this is over here, this is over there, that's my map. And so it's a semantic map now. I love this. So sort of grammar, how do words form, how do sentences form? Are they sort of using the same regions, but just flexing them with different languages. I like that. I'm not mad at this one. So I think this might be science. The life cycle reduction in greenhouse gas emissions from switching. Okay, so far that makes sense. From diesel to fully electric medium and heavy duty trucks. Okay, so you're saying that if we were to switch over the course of that truck's life, right? That's the life cycle?
Yeah, life cycle is from soup to nuts. It's from creating it to recycling it, the whole life cycle. Yep.
Wow, diesel to electric, 92%. Does that assume that they are using like facilities that also use renewable energy?
So I'll tell you, that's in the as much as. So that means that's the best you can do. Yeah.
Right. So it would be, basically taking all fossil fuel out of the production side as well.
If you're charging it up with coal-fired electricity, it's probably not as beneficial.
Right. I'm not so mad at that. Let's see. So did Homo naledi inbreed with Homo sapiens? Oh, I don't know how old Homo naledi is. So that's probably a really important part of this. I could tell you. Okay.
Again, you're going first, so I could sort of, whatever I tell you, I'm also telling the guys. So they were around, as far as we know, between 335,000 and 241,000 years ago. So that's within the time frame of Homo sapiens.
That is interesting. Now the question is, where were they? Which you probably also won't tell me. So there's a burial site, and it is a Homo naledi burial site. So there they only found Homo naledi. So this isn't a function of seeing them intermingled with Homo sapiens. It's a function of looking at protein analysis, which I'm assuming they're doing because the DNA is too degraded. Like you can't actually look at the DNA directly. Significant interbreeding. I think I'm going to say this is fiction. I could be very wrong, only because a fair amount of sort of like the consumer DNA tests love to harp on like how much Neanderthal you are and even how much like Denisovant, but I don't think I've ever seen anybody be like, you're this percent Naledi. So maybe it's because it's too new. So I could be wrong for that. But this one feels like maybe I would have heard something. So I'm going to call that the fiction.
Okay, Bob.
Yeah, for Naledi, I'm thinking that this might be just new. So that's what I'm just going to assume there. And of course, I could absolutely be wrong. Let's see. So the life cycle reduction in greenhouse gas emissions, that kind of makes sense. As my mom loves to point out, look at all the trucks on the road. Like, there's a lot of damn trucks on the road. It's the lifeblood of our economy. That makes sense. That if you can, I guess the assumption here is that you're switching all the diesel to electric. What the impact would be. Is that?
So, all right, I think you're misinterpreting this. This just means like per truck. Like if you turn that truck from a diesel burning truck to a fully electric truck, that truck's carbon footprint is reduced by 92%.
Okay.
This is not like in the U.S. or in the system.
So it's on a truck by truck level.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, the hope would be that would translate, but yeah.
Right. Exactly. To dramatic differences, and that still makes sense to me. The one that got me though was this third one here about balanced bilingual subjects. I just think the semantic map, having studied, I mean, I don't have a lot of experience with other languages, but even Spanish and Italian, I think that semantic map would be more different than this is saying here. Let me read it again because there's always some like one word that kind of I miss. I think that semantic map would be more different than it seems like you're saying right here. So I'll say that one's fiction.
Okay, and Jay.
All right, so Steve, the Homo naledi, did you tell Kara when they existed?
I did.
And Kara, you heard Steve say this?
I did.
Okay, good. Thank you.
335,000 to 241,000 years ago.
So how could they coexist with contemporary Homo sapiens?
Meaning contemporary to them at the time, obviously. And Homo sapiens, were around then.
Okay.
Yeah, aren't we 250,000, something like that?
I mean, they were early Homo sapiens.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All right, and you say significant interbreeding. Okay, so that's shocking. Okay, let me just put a pin in that one real quick. The second one, a new analysis finds that the life cycle reduction in greenhouse gas emissions from switching from diesel to fully electric. Yeah, 92%. Absolutely. I wonder why there's still 8%. What would be the difference? Like, why would there be even that, that left over? But sure, 92%, I totally buy that. The last one here about the bilingual subjects and about the common semantic map in the hippocampus. I would imagine that your brain just stores all of your semantic mapping in one place, and that whatever ones you have learned are all there. Doesn't matter what language they come from. So that one sounds very sciencey to me as well. Yeah, this first one, like the two words that trouble me are significant breeding. If there was significant breeding, then I think we would have heard about this, and it would be a very well-known part of human history that, we would have a lot more clarity on and everything. Like, just finding out about this now to me seems absurd. So that one is definitely the fiction to me.
Okay. So you all agree on the second one, so we'll start there. A new analysis finds that the life cycle reduction in greenhouse gas emissions from switching from diesel to fully electric medium and heavy-duty trucks is as much as 92%. You all think this one is science, and this one is science. Yep, this is science. And so the life cycle analysis is always the best way to address these questions, because you have to consider, like, that 8%, Jay, is like it costs carbon to build the batteries and to build the trucks and to then recycle them. And right? And I know a lot of the, again, like the deniers, the anti-EV people, like, oh, it costs more to make the batteries. And it doesn't. The life cycle analysis of any EV, shows it reduces overall carbon. It costs overall less money. And the same is true here. What they found was, now the 92% is if you're charging the trucks with entirely renewable energy, right? It was the estimates range from 87 to 92%. So 92 was, again, the as much as. What do you think it was if you based upon the current grid?
65%?
Yeah, close, 44 to 68%.
Oh, nice, Karen.
Okay. All right. 44. Woof.
Yeah.
That means we got a ways to go. Yeah.
And then,
I love it.
Yeah,
And is that assuming then on the low end, it's not only that the grid itself has I don't want to say dirty energy, but like carbon energy as a source, but also like when they're building the batteries, the factories, all of that, they're being lit with carbon energy. Yeah. Okay.
But I think it's mainly what's charging up the battery. This could be the biggest part of that. And they also did it for hydrogen fuel cells, and it's much worse. So the hydrogen fuel cells, again, using current methods, it's 12 to 51%. Using electrolysis powered entirely by renewable energy is 72 to 82%. So battery electric vehicles are just more efficient than hydrogen vehicles. And and also we are nowhere near, being able to fuel these trucks with green hydrogen. Green hydrogen is like 1% of the hydrogen that's being produced. It's a very small amount. But that would change if we find that there's tons of like hydrogen sitting under the earth that we could just tap into. That will change the calculus. But for now, the best thing to do is just to go fully electric. And Bob, to answer your question, 30% of the carbon footprint of transportation is in this category of medium to heavy trucks.
Yeah, man.
Wow.
So it's a huge chunk of it. Yeah. So this could go a long way to reducing our carbon footprint. Okay, let's go back to number 1. Examination of proteins taken from the Homo naledi burial site indicates significant interbreeding with contemporary Homo sapiens. Jay and Kara, you think this one is the fiction. Bob, you think this one is science. So you guys, Jay, you sounds like you don't remember the whole Homo naledi story. This was a fairly recent find, and this is a very unusual group of early hominids.
Like hobbits, right? They refer to?
The hobbits you're thinking of the other ones, the from the small island. This is in Africa.
Okay.
They found, remember, this is the cave that they had to get women to like crawl deep into the cave. Yes, because
it was so scarily narrow.
So tiny.
And it's like a massive burial site of a whole bunch of fossils. And
what a find.
Yeah, it was an amazing find. And the thing about them is that they have fairly modern features anatomically, but pretty small brains. And the thinking is that this is an offshoot deep in the Homo sapien tree that has been isolated for a very long period of time.
Oh, that makes sense. So they had a common, like an immediate common ancestor, possibly.
Maybe, but probably a long time ago.
Yeah.
And so it's very unusual. Like, this is a really weird, probably means they were isolated for a long time. Now, the overlap, so the fossil evidence suggests that Homo sapiens go back 300,000 years.
Oh, okay. Not 250, 300.
But so right in the middle of the Homo naledi time period. But the genetic evidence suggests it could be as deep as 800,000 years.
Really?
Yeah.
That's interesting.
But it's always, again, remember, it's a continuum, so it depends on where you where you draw the line of what is a Homo sapiens. But yeah, so somewhere between 300 and 800,000 years ago. So definitely overlap with Homo naledi. And humans were in Africa at the time, so there's spatial overlap as well. But this is the fiction.
Oh.
It is.
All right.
God damn it.
They didn't find this. In fact, the thinking still is they were probably isolated from other hominid populations for a very long period of time. Now, there was a study, however, looking at the proteins taken from the teeth of this population of Homo naledi found in this cave. And what they found was very unusual, but it's hard, but we don't know exactly how to interpret it. They were looking for a number of things, but one of the things they were looking at was a protein that only males have.
Okay.
And that the amelogenin Y, right? I'm probably pronouncing that wrong. Amylogenin, maybe amylogenin Y. They did not find it in any of the fossils. So that could mean that all of the people buried there were females.
Oh, interesting.
And if true, that would mean, a sophisticated kind of burial practice with some, developed ideas about, how to go about burying people. If they decided to only bury females in this one location. But because this population is so weird, basically, and so isolated from other hominids, they're saying we can't rule out that they simply don't have this protein, that they evolved away from it.
Oh, okay.
Right?
Yeah.
So so either one of those two things, I mean, it can't just be a coincidence, right? It's just too many samples. So one of those two things is likely true. For some reason, they only buried females here, or they simply lack this protein. The males lack this protein.
So they could probably figure this out if there's another.
Yes, we need other sites.
Gender marker. Or if there's just there's another gender marker in the protein.
Yeah. They need to find some other gender marker, or they need to find another. They need to find more fossils.
Exactly. Yeah.
If they find but here's the thing: and part of the reason why they did this study, there's very little sexual dimorphism among these fossils, less than other hominids. So this, so this could be why. There's less sexual dimorphism because they're all females. So either that or there just is less dimorphism and the males don't have this protein. So, Occam's razor, I don't know. What does that favor? It makes it seem like these are probably all females, which would be weird, but we don't know yet for sure. Okay, which means that in a study of balanced bilingual subjects, scientists found that different languages share a common semantic map in the hippocampus is science. This is freaking cool. Now,
It's very cool.
There's a couple of cool things here. So the semantic map means, so they were looking at which neurons fire when people say or hear a specific word, right? So they were listening, they were doing directed speech production and naturalistic conversation, right? All three conditions. And they found that the neurons would fire related to a specific word. And that now, even if we're just looking at a single language, that there was kind of a conceptual map to where these words would physically localize. And words whose meaning were closer together were physically closer together. Think about that. If two words were very similar, they would be close to each other in this semantic map. And if two words were completely different in terms of their meaning, they would be further away from each other on this semantic map. So farther away.
Okay.
It makes sense, yeah.
Well, it makes sense that you think about how we think of words and how we relate the meaning of words to other words and everything, that there's actually a physical underlying, again, semantic map that kind of produces that. Is really interesting. So then they said, okay, well, what about different languages? So they looked at individual neurons, and it turns out that individual neurons are different when you say the same word, like big and grande, right? So do they use the same neuron or different neurons? Well, it turns out they use different neurons. They're not using the same neuron, but they map to the same place. You have The two maps superimpose over each other pretty much, right? And which is really interesting. So we're using this, it's like there's a common semantic map, and then we attach words to those maps, even in different languages. But the neurons that would produce the output are different. So you would either output big or you would output grande, but basically from the same location, even if not the same specific neuron. Does that make sense?
It makes perfect sense.
That is cool.
I mean, it's funny how actually elegant it is when you think about it. It's like it's not at all surprising, and yet it's like very, very cool that they figured this out.
And know what it reminds me of? Do you guys remember what our friend from Google told us, that when Google made its language translator,
it had its own language.
It created its own machine language so that you wouldn't go from French to English. You would go from French to its language to English.
Yeah.
So it had this, so it's like our brains kind of work the same way. We have a universal sort of conceptual map, and then we just output to different languages.
And the map itself reminds me of, have you guys ever played the atrocious and anger-inducing online game Semantle?
No.
Highly recommend. It's ridiculous. You basically just say any word and then it gives you a percentage. It'll be like 10%. And you're like, oh, that's bad. So then you can pick another word and you're aiming to increase your percentage. And once you start like hitting, it tells you you're like 1,000 words away from the target word, or you're 500 words away. And it uses AI to figure out how all words are connected. But it is so infuriating because you're trying to just guess semantically what their target word is based on yeses and nos of all your guesses, and basically how hot or cold you are.
Interesting.
But what do they base it? What is it based on?
They use some sort of AI that basically looks at all words and then connects them all. Like it's black box.
It's a semantic.
We don't know.
Can you give us an example of a word that's far away and then another word that was very close but not quite there?
Yeah, like you would say like, and then it would say like 2%.
Okay.
And then you would say dancing, and it might say 90%. Or 90, it actually, at that point, it gives you how close it is, like, I think within 1,000. And then you're like, okay, so dancing. And then you'd be like dancer, or you would be like ballroom, or shoe. And you, based on that, you start narrowing in.
It's kind of like charades.
Kind of, but like, trust me, you will be throwing your phone against the wall, but it's fun. But yeah, it's the semantic map. It's just here. The cool thing is you're actually talking about like a topographical map too.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah, it's a physical map.
Like that's very cool. It's like the way we think about the somatosensory mapping in our brains.
Yeah, exactly. Somatotopic.
I love that. That's
mapping,
very cool.
Oh, the whatchamacallit?
Yeah, the homunculus.
Homunculus.
Yeah.
It's a homunculus, man.
I love that little dude.
I know.
So goofy looking.
And the fact that there is a semantic map is a good thing if we want to interface with the brain, right? Because all we have to do is figure out that map. But I wonder now how similar it is between people, or does everybody have their own semantic map? And they don't?
Right.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah,
that's true. It's probably a little bit of both, but it's validating for me all those times when I feel like I have a word at the tip of my tongue, and I'll use a different word that's not anything like it, but it is semantically like it. Like I use it in different senses, but the word itself sounds different. It's because it's probably mapped in a similar area.
Steve, I wonder how this map would change what if you tripled your vocabulary? Is there a limit to a vocabulary then based on how many points you have available?
I don't know. And does it interpolate or expand outward? I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, like how much neurogenesis is actually happening here. Because we have found that there are places in the brain where we are creating new cells all the time.
And the hippocampus is one of those places.
Exactly. So my guess is that just the density becomes more intense. Yeah. You just develop more connections and you might even grow actual new neurons.
Yeah. Imagine
that's cool.
I reached my limit. If I learn a new word, I'm going to have to forget another one. So pick them wisely.
All right, Bob, you are taking over the Skeptical Quote of the Week segment.
Yes, sir.
Thanks, Bob.
Yes, sir. Okay, so I'm going to start with the context of the quote. to put it into a little perspective before I actually say it. I've been thinking even more recently about the sorry state of scientific literacy in the U.S., and also not just literacy itself, but just incuriousness, right? It's like, well, how could you not want to investigate and learn and discover? I mean, whatever, all of that, and what we could do about it. I saw this quote by Mae Jemison. Mae Jemison is engineer, physician, former NASA astronaut. She was a mission specialist aboard the Space Shuttle Endeavour, and, not to bury the lead, but first Black woman to travel in space ever, which is fantastic. And on top of all of that awesomeness, she did a cameo on Star Trek Next Gen. So how cool is that? So Mae Jemison said, a big part of engaging kids in science is not getting the single correct answer. It's being willing to work with students to discover the correct answer. And I know Steve, Jay, and I, try to do that with our kids. But Steve, I remember you specifically have an interesting story of how you would interact with your kids when they asked a question like that. So could you say that again?
Well, one example I think I gave was like one of my daughters asked, what color were dinosaurs? And I said, well, how could we possibly know what color they were? And then it's good to ask questions where there's no like right or wrong answer. It's just, let's think about it creatively. Let's come up with ideas. And then we sort of worked towards what we could know about them, based upon fossils, etc. I didn't expect her to say, well, we could look at the chromatic proteins that we could, whatever. But just forcing them or encouraging them to think rather than saying, here's the answer, kid, now go away, you're bothering me,
Yeah, because sometimes they're sparked with a lifelong mission when you do that. Like, how could we know? Well, we could know if we looked at this. Well, we don't have the tools to do that yet, but we're working on it. Maybe that'll happen in your lifetime.
Yeah, and as people are fond of saying quite frequently, is that kids are born scientists, and they really are asking questions. We know the questions are endless. I hate the idea of having that beat out of kids, And so I want to encourage the parents out there, they're listening. If they ask you a question, sure, you can answer it depending on the context, but also don't try to avoid being like, no, Jimmy, that's a cow. But Jay, right? Is that funny?
Yeah, right.
That's from one of our favorite comedians. But instead of answering it, bring them on this journey of discovery and figuring out how could they answer that question. Because what a powerful tool to have in their toolkit, and also instilling this love of science and discovery is just so invaluable for the entire world.
Well, thank you guys for joining me this week.
Thanks, Steve.
You're welcome, Steve.
I mean, this was, especially at the beginning, this was a difficult episode. Yeah. Obviously, we're all, we're trying to go on and do a normal show. We are all devastated by this, and we still have a lot of work to do to get through this. But thank you all for continuing on this journey with us. And until next week, this is your Skeptic's Guide to the Universe. Skeptic's Guide to the Universe is produced by SGU Productions, dedicated to promoting science and critical thinking. For more information, visit us at theskepticsguide.org. Send your questions to info@theskepticsguide.org. And if you would like to support the show and all the work that we do, go to patreon.com/skepticsguide and consider becoming a patron and becoming part of the SGU community. Our listeners and supporters are what make SGU possible.